Thank you for the invitation as well. So as Joanna mentioned, I've worked and I currently work as a lecturer and also at Levi, so you could say from the industry side. So there are, let's say, two sides of the coins, what we do in academia, what we do in industry and so on. But most of all, what is this to be working in the data field, right? So the session of today, the purpose is to understand what can I leverage from the academia world? How can I apply it in the industry? And what do I need to learn and where I can learn, okay? So those are the points that we're looking at some questions that sometimes arise to our mind when we think about this, because it's like a big boom. You hear it all the time on the news and so on, right? And then as soon as that, we have a sort of a conversation on it. How does it look a day in the life of a professional that works within this field, right? How does it look? Are we in the cave, isolated? Are we working with the stakeholders? Are we working a lot with our colleagues? Is it a mixed environment and so on? So that's the idea as well. And see us with your own eyes, how do we tackle data as well? So we will see a very quick exercise to get a sense of it. How does it look like? All right. So having that said, let's take some definition for the roles that sometimes we see, jobs adverts, and they ask for data scientists, but other times they ask for data analysts. And also we have data engineers. So what's the difference? What do I need to understand on what are their responsibilities? But also if I want to become one, be part of that role, what do I need to learn, right? So let's begin with data analysts. So data analysts, its main role, it's to identify trends and patterns in data. So they want to help drive decisions by taking raw data, organizing it, build reports, see what's going on in there, to also give alerts on changes that are happening as well. So they are looking at data that you could call historical data because it already happened, and they are transforming it in a way that is digestible by the different stakeholders, all right? In terms of know-how, what do I need to do to learn to be able to accomplish this job? Well, I need some statistical skills. I don't need to be a statistic background or mathematics, very strong in that, but I do need some to understand how do I put data together. So if I want to build a report, for example, I need to aggregate data. And when I do aggregate data, what do I do? Should I do the average? Should I do the max, the mean? How do I show this? How do I present this, right? So it actually helps you to understand some statistical background on how I can put this together and what sort of concerns do I have when I prepare the data for that purpose, all right? Now, programming knowledge, you don't need to be like having very strong computational background, but it does help for you to know SQL, because a lot of these jobs require for you to, your data is available from SQL, from data warehouses, so you do need to know how to get to the data, how to manipulate it, and so on. So some programming knowledge and knowledge also for SQL, it's expected as a data analyst. Now, if that's data analyst, what is the data scientist? What is he doing? Because for some of you, I imagine some bells ring like, but I hear that data scientists also do that. They clean data, they prepare data, right? So the thing is, within the realm of what data analysts do, also data scientists do. So it's a sort of an overlap. And it depends on where you are working at. So in the sense that more and more we see industry embracing to be more data-driven. So the more data-driven they are for the longest, it means that you have teams where we have a lot of data analysts that have already prepared the data. So when the data scientists come along, they don't need to spend as much of their time doing that job. They can focus more on the modeling phase. And what is this of the modeling phase? Well, I also, as a data scientist, want to understand the past, the history, but with a different intent, with the intent of understanding what's in there to bring decisions, to help decisions for the future. So as well, data scientists, as the data analyst, is working together with the stakeholders to help drive decisions through data. So we are more certain on what we are doing, but here we are also trying to drive what is probably going to happen in the future based on what I saw in the past. And for this purpose, in terms of what I need to know on my skills, well, I also need to know the same as the data analyst. I need to know how to approach the data. So SQL programming knowledge is also required. But I also need to understand what is machine learning? What are these algorithms that I can leverage to help me build these predictive models? So that's what is expected from a data scientist, all right? Now, finally, the last one, we see there in green, the data engineer. What is the purpose? Well, data engineers are, you could call our pillars, right? So both of these two other roles, they rely on data. So if the data is not there, if all of a sudden it's breaking, if it's coming from many different systems that required very specific, let's say, programming language because they come from it's legacy systems, let's say, right? So data engineers are here to help us as data analysts, as data scientists, to have all the data ready for us through the same platform, all right? So in the end of the day, when we look at these three roles, we all work together, all right? So on my daily basis, I'm talking with data scientists, data analysts, and data engineers. So we are all a team, okay? But as a final point regarding the data engineer, it is expected for you to have a stronger programming background because you will be expected also to help the data scientists and data analysts when they struggle with computation problems because the data is too big. So maybe I should do my data preparation in a different manner. So they really help us on that job. And also it's expected that they are comfortable with the data pipelines in the cloud infrastructure. So they should know how to put an architecture on the cloud to build the data pipelines. So this is what is expected as well in terms of know-how from a data engineer perspective, from the data engineer side. Okay. Now, why are we also here? So the thing is, this is in high demand. And on this point, I'm just going to give you some stats on what's going on. And one of that I think it's the super interesting is the Bureau of Labor Statistics. They say that it's expected that this field will grow by 25% within the next decade. That's huge if you think about 25%. So this shows how much demand is expected to have people with the know-how on how to work with data, right? So why? Well, the why is because it has been proven that we can drive business, we can bring a lot of value. So at the same time, if there's expected this growth, a couple of things is happening, right? So we need people with the skills to accomplish this. All right, so we need to know also, if I want to have these skills, where do I go? Where do I start? Okay. Another interesting statistics, and also it's impacted by this factor of the growth being so high in such a short period of time, is that even though we have people that are interested on onboarding, they're not enough. So on average, the jobs for the area of data, they stay about 45 days there, which is a lot higher in comparison to the other fields. So it seems like at the same time, we do struggle to find the right people for the job. So why not get the skills that we need to go there and actually fulfill what the companies are looking for? Because this is in huge demand as well. All right. Now, I am here talking to you, and I work as a lecturer at CodeOp. So what is CodeOp, and why is so related as well with more women? So at CodeOp, what we are trying to accomplish is to bring more diversity to the field. And for some reason, and I don't want to go into details on that point, but it is a fact that we have less women on STEM than men. Now, if you think about what I was just telling you regarding the statistics, that it shows that this area is going to boom, right? Well, we should have a balanced environment in this area, right? An area with such an impact. And why would you want diversity? Well, The thing is, a diverse team it is shown that it will outperform teams that are not as diverse. So everybody benefits for having a team that is diverse, that brings diversity. It brings also at the same time a more inclusive future. And while you are developing your algorithms, you will find out that sometimes you need to keep your eye open because we need to avoid algorithm bias. It's not because we see bias in our data that we should prolong that bias. And by having, again, diversity in the team, we have more awareness of these points. So there are many reasons. I'm just flagging some of them, but that's why we are also trying to raise the flag and bring more women into the field by promoting, you could call it a safe environment where they are not shy to speak their minds. There are no stupid questions. Actually, every question is valid. So that's the objective here. Come to us, talk about, we didn't understand, where are your doubts, and so on. All right. And as a consequence, we managed to bring more diversity to the field. At this point, there are many, many terms within the data field, and you probably heard some of them. And one is data muging. Also, it's known as data wrangling. And what is this? So as a data analyst and a data scientist, a lot of the things we do is taking data that is raw, or even when it's not raw, it was prepared for a different purpose. And I need to go through that data and work on it to have it in the format that I want. So what am I doing? I'm making the data more digestible. So hence the term muging, right? You are digesting your data to make sure that in the beginning it was hard to see what was the value in it. And after you work through the data, hey, I can actually drive some insights from it. In general, and now I'm saying in general because it depends how the company that you might be working for is, but in general, this is where we spend a lot of our time. Getting to know our data and also preparing the data for the purpose that we have in hands. And sometimes I might go back to the same data and I work in a different way because at that point I have a different purpose. All right. So that's the whole data preparation journey is all about. And then we have all these cool terms to refer to it. All right. So in the beginning, I was talking about those 3 different roles. And I did mention that data analysts look at historical data. Why? Well, they're building reports. They're trying to find insights through the data. They're just helping to bring the KPIs to analyze how, for instance, a campaign worked out, for instance, right? So in reality, they are doing descriptive analytics, right? They are looking at historical data and understanding what happened in there to drive decisions, right? To see if it worked, how can you do it better next time, and so on. Now you have the other side of the coin where I was talking about the data scientists, that they also leverage historical data, but then what do? They build predictive models, and those predictive models will look at the future. In the data that we're going to look at in a bit for the exercise, it's about fitness. So it's a survey where we took different participants and we asked them, what is your age group? How long do you exercise? What type of activities do you like to do? So if you think about this type of data and focusing here on the descriptive and predictive scope, for the descriptive analytics, I could say that I'm going to look at that data because I'm a data analyst, let's imagine, and I'm going to give information about that survey. So the people who did that survey, what is their preference for the activities they do by age group? So I know that the younger age group likes more to run, as let's say the older age group likes more to do activities as yoga or something else. I'm making this up right now, by the way. But you are leveraging this type of insights. So nobody wants to go through the survey one by one. I can have like thousands of people in there, but the data analyst goes in there and groups in a meaningful way to understand what does that gym wants to do, right? What type of activities should I promote when I want to focus on different age groups? And while doing that, you are doing descriptive analytics. So let's say I'm a data scientist and I also want to take that data. What can I do as well? So let's say that you want to understand people from different cities based on what they said. And I want to predict in the upcoming months, what is the level of fitness they have based on what they told me. So you are actually predicting that given on the different people in each one of those cities, what they said in the future, how likely they are to be more or less fit. Okay, so in that point on, you are again using historical data, but the type of insights you're bringing, it's more uncertain, but well, you're building predictive models and you can also add some certainty to it. And that's also what you learn on how to build the machine learning models and also bring trust when you bring those results. Okay, so you could say this like looking at the past, looking at the future. Okay. And as we're going through this journey, I did the data merging, right? I take my data, I work on it. And when I say work on it and I look at data, how does my data look like, right? So you could split in two different worlds. One of them is that I have numerical data. As you see here in the first example, right? I have numbers. And why is this relevant for me as a data person? Well, if I have numbers, I have the capability of working on that data given that it has that characteristic. So for example, I can say, what is the max weight that we have from our participants, for example, or the max height. Or I can say an average, how much does these participants, they train, right? So what I'm saying is you can do operations that are valid for numbers. All right. Now, I do have other type of information that is known as categorical. So for instance, if I have a column that talks about the color, let's say, of the flowers I have in my garden, I could have these options. I have green flowers, blue flowers, red flowers. So these are categorical variables. And they are handled in a different way because if I do try to see what's in between green and blue, doesn't make sense, right? So there's not green bluish, right? So the point here is the way you handle categorical variables to clean your data, to prepare your data is different when it's numbers, all right? And you need to know what you have in your data so you can decide how you're going to prepare everything for either your report, your insights, or your model. However, in the real world, it's not always like that. So what if I don't really have numbers, I don't have categories, but I still have that data and I'm asked to bring value from it. So let's take one example. Here, what you're looking at, it's a piece of text, right? So it has what you can call words, sentences, paragraphs, and this enters within the realm of natural language processing. So I still want to bring value from it. I want to understand what's going on within those texts that people are, they're talking about. Let's say they're talking about your brand. They are talking in your blog, and you want to not go through everything they're saying, but you want to understand what is the core message, the core topics, right? So what is the challenge? I don't have numbers and I don't have categories. So I look at this, and in this area, what you do is it's known as bringing something that is unstructured, because it's not like the numbers that we know it's a continuous value, or the categories that take only those values. Here you are seeing you won't be able to hear us, but if I have a new piece of text, it will be written in a different way. So it doesn't follow the same rules. So I'm going to bring this unstructured thing into a structured format. And how do we do this in NLP? Well, basically, I say, this is my vocabulary, and I'm going to represent every piece of text I have following that vocabulary. So that's let's say, the punchline, that how you start to work with natural language processing tools. And the message is, it's not because it's not already ready for me that I can't work with it. Now, there's another really special type of data that we have that it's super essential for us to, let's say, respect it. And this is the time series data. So how does time series look like? Let's think about the numerical variables, right? So let's say I'm in the example of the fitness and I'm asked in January, how often do you train? Well, I did this New Year resolution and I decided that I want to be fit during summertime. So I'm training every day 2 hours. So that's the information I gave in January. Now let's think about the same participants and you ask them in February, March, and so on. So the point here is my answer will be different because that attribute, which was the number of hours that I took, it changes across time. It's not always the same, right? So my motivation kind of dropped. So I'm not so worried about getting thin. So I'm training less. So it means that when I prepare my data, I'm doing in a time series manner. So the same attribute, in this case, the number of hours that I train, it will have different values based on the time series that I'm looking at. And that allows me to, again, bring insights to capture trends as a data scientist and data analyst, because I can look at historical data, what was the trends, and I also can predict what's coming up on my next series, right? Finally, one example that it's again touching us in so many different, especially applications that we use nowadays, right? We are here as looking at the Google Maps icon, but we have data that it relies on geolocation data. So it's known as geospatial data, okay? So what does it mean? Again, I don't have the structure of the number and the categories. It's not like NLP, I had that piece of text. It's not like time series that I'm looking at this timestamp. No, what is for me right now? For me, is a point in the map, latitude, longitude. And what do I know about that point in the map? And everything that I work on top of that is to bring value based on that position. You could think about it, for example, that I want to leverage the distance from one point to another, but also based on the attributes that I have on each one of those points, which could be, I have a nice road that it gets me quicker. It could be because I have, I don't know, it's a beautiful place and so on. So what I mean is you are actually bringing information to that point in the map, and you will have a data set that has all of that together, and then you bring insights about them as for instance, in an aggregated way as well. But the latitude, longitude was one of your starting points. So you need to look at the data in a different way. All right. Okay. So this is just to give you a sense of what are the roles that we find in data as a data person. How does it look, the data that we tackle, the challenges that we encounter, and how does it look like a day in the life? So I'm, let's say, a data person. How does it look like? So in general, you do spend a lot of time on the data muging one, okay? So you are collecting. If the collecting depends, you have a very strong engineering team with you, maybe not spending so much time in collecting, but you are preparing your data. Okay, you are working on top of your data. That's where you spend a lot of your time. Now, of course, you are trying to spot patterns. So that's part of the journey. And the patterns can be either to bring insights, to build the reports, or to build your models. But that's part of the journey. And it's a very interlinked connection. So I'm working on my data, I'm spotting patterns on top of this. And those patterns that I found many times help me drive decisions on what I want to do with my data. Okay? And this is the really important point. So data scientists, data analysts, data engineers, we are not in a cave, not at all. And that's a very important point to highlight. We are in constant contact with the stakeholders, and we should always avoid working too long without communicating our progress, without saying what we are seeing in the data. because in the end of the day, they are the business experts, and they are the ones who can actually even help us explain some of the things we see in there. So we don't want to take all the journey and then come with a result that they tell us that doesn't make any sense. You should have spoken with me earlier. So that's why these teams are in constant dialogue with the stakeholders. So basically with the business teams. We are also in constant contact with the data engineers because, well, I need your help. So basically, it's a constant collaboration with the other teams, but also with your own team. Okay, are you stuck? Okay, we do think that we should try to, resolve it by our own because it's also a learning phase. But there's a moment that you should talk with your colleagues. And you should also share your breakthroughs with them because you took learnings from it, share it. So it's a collaboration throughout the whole way. And it's not only on academia, it's in the industry as well. And of course, then you deliver your results, okay? So you could see this as a circle, and you are going through all of this during your, not all of this within the same day, but you go through this process constantly, okay? So now let's look at here at an example. So an exercise. Let me just, all right. Let me just put this maybe a bit bigger. Okay. All right. Is it good? Oh, okay. All right. So as I said, this is a fitness survey. It is, I'm going to show you here. So what do you have here? We took 500 participants, 545 participants, and we'll ask them a couple of questions about fitness, okay? There are 18 questions that we filled out. How do I know? Because I loaded my data. The data, actually, let me show you in here. Okay, it's not there, but it's a CSV file, so it's an Excel file, okay? And within this tool that you're looking at, which is a Python notebook, I've loaded this into this object. Now, throughout this example that I'm showing you, one of the objectives as well is to show how easy it is to work with this library, to understand what I have in my data, but also to clean everything out, drive insights without having to travel to different tools and then go back and forth, copy paste and so on. That's not the goal. Let's leverage this type of technologies that have come up and gain a lot of strength to help data people to be more effective in their job. All right. So this is where I have my data. And you can think about this data like as this. Let me go here first. So if you look at this, this is my data frame. Okay. The data that just loaded from that CSV file. If you think about it, it has a very similar format as you see on Excel. I have columns, okay? This is a timestamp, your name, your gender. So these are my columns. And what I have as well, I have rows. So each one of these are rows. And actually here in this case are the answers from the participants, okay? So in the end of the day, I am working with a very similar format that we've known since we're very little, okay? Other things that are really nice about using this type of technology is that I can leverage from methods that are already prepared to work with my data. So for example, I can just say, hey, tell me some information about my data frame. So it actually shows me all the columns I have. And in the end, you see this D type is telling me what type of information is in there. Remember when we were seeing how important it is to know if it's numeric, if it's a categorical, and I told you that there are different operations that I can do on top of that. So if you look at it, object usually refers if you have textual information, but it can be other stuff as well. But one thing for sure, it's not across all the data. It's not a numeric value. Now this one is a numeric value, and it's the column that answers how important exercise is to you. Then as I go through it, I see another one. How healthy do you consider yourself? So I have two numerical columns. So now notice when I go there to my data and I say, hey, do some describe on it, do some statistics on top of my data. And when it played out, if you notice, I only have two columns. Why? because this type of statistics only makes sense on top of numerical columns. So it's already helping me. I don't have to go through all the hassle of going all on this ones and so on, right? And what it does, well, it gives me the total count, okay? So I have 545 participants, but I know on average how important exercise is. And if I look at it, and if I didn't know what do I have in the back, I can have very quickly intuition, because the minimum is 1, the max is 5. So I guess the participants got a score from 1 to 5, right? And on average, it seems like the exercise is quite important, because if you round it, it's 4. But how healthy do you consider yourself? Well, it's not exactly the same. So we can see that people find it important, but they do not exactly classify themselves as healthy as maybe they would wish to be, okay? All right. So this is how the data looks like. And then I can, get a sense of it, of what I see in here and so on. And one of the things that I see straight on is, okay, but these column names are really long, and this will make me harder later on in the process to work on top of it. So because of that, I just decide to, okay, this is my initial columns, the ones that were the questions that were given to the participants. I'm going to rename them to something smaller to make it easy throughout the journey to look at my data. Okay, so as you look at it, basically what I'm doing is, for instance, your name will become name, your gender, gender. For instance, this one, how important is exercise to you? We're just going to call it exercise importance. Okay, so I'm not changing my data, but I make it more easy to look at, instead of having this very long text on the top of it. Okay, all right. So for me to do this, the only thing that we have to do is I call out my df, which is my data, and I just rename the columns. Okay, and as soon as I do that, just notice how nice the columns look like. So at this point, it's a lot easier for me to work on top of it, because I'm going to pick some of those columns to bring some of my insights. And I don't have to say, hey, pick that very long question with a question mark and spaces and so on. I can just take exercise importance, for example. Okay. Another thing that I did was, well, based on the analysis that I want to do, so I'm just taking here an assumption, I want to do understanding a bit about what's going on these participants, but I want to understand it as a whole. I do not care much about who was one specific participant's answers. So it means that the name of the participants, it's not relevant, because it's unique to that participant. And I want to understand the group, not that particular person. And then also the timestamp. At this point, I am not doing time series analysis, so I also don't care the when, okay? But notice how I'm saying this. I don't care about time series analysis because it's not my purpose. If I had a different purpose, I would look at my data with a different angle as well, okay? All right. So let's say I want to answer this question. How important it is exercise on the different age groups? So I had age here on the top, and actually age, if I do unique for age, I see that it has a sort of a bin. So if someone is within the bin of 19 to 25 years old, they have selected that option and so forth, okay? So I want to see how important it is to them. So let me go up here just to show you something again. So this is my age, and I want to put together everyone from the same age group. And then for those, I want to see how important exercise was. So I'm going to have to do some sort of aggregation in there as well, right? So I'm leveraging here other libraries from Python. Here is Seaborn, and in Seaborn we have Faceit Grid. And actually what it does is it will build this for you. So the only thing that actually requires is for you to say on what. So I'm going to say, I want to go for the column age, and I want you to do the Faceit Grid for my column exercise importance. Everything else that you see in here, it's just for to make the plot nice, so to make it wider and so on. So it's not as relevant. The core point is how I pick the data for my analysis. And it's really small if you think about it. This speed that you are seeing here is just because I want to make it order in the way I want it. So I want to have the 15 to 18 first, then the 19, 25, and I noticed that they were not ordered, okay? So how does this look like? So as soon as I called that method, FACEITGrid, it grouped everything by age. So as you see here on the top, I have my bin, my first one, then from 15 to 18, 19 to 25, and so forth. And for each one of them, we have here, you know, it goes from 0 to 1. So it's just a percentage, right, of how important exercise it is to them. So very quickly, you do realize that as the groups, the age groups grow older, exercise becomes more important. And that's pretty obvious just by looking at these charts, right? All right, so what else can we say? So you could question yourself, what type of exercise do they prefer? I want to make a decision for my gym. I want to understand what are people really liking to attend? What makes them, you know, feel more enjoyable, right? So maybe I can make an effort to have bigger rooms for it, hire more trainers for those specific exercises. So there was a question that was which exercises they like. And it was a multiple question. Some of the participants could have said more than one. If you look at it, it's pretty noisy. So see, for example, this one, this participant said walking or jogging and yoga. So it's separated by this dot comma. This one says also walking or jogging, gym, lifting weights. So it has actually 3 preferences, and gym is just something in general, right? So if I want to answer the question, what type of exercises they prefer, I need to organize this, right? I cannot work with that. So what did I do? Well, I take all of that information that you see on the top, and I'm going to navigate through it. And what I'm going to say is it the first time I see walking or jogging? If it's the first time, I'm going to say I count it as 1. I saw it once. Now, if I go through it, I take another participant. Hey, I already saw walking or jogging in another participant. So in that case, I'm going to add another one to it. And this allows me to have in this object, I have all the different activities and how often I saw it. So for instance, I see for gym, I have 140 participants that actually like it. Then we have 90 participants that they said that don't really like exercise at all. But for instance, we can see that walking and jogging, it's 324. All right. So there are a couple of nice things. So if you notice here, super noisy. And now all of a sudden I realized that after all, the options they had weren't that many. They had about 7 options. So it's a lot more digestible just on this step. And I already have some sense of how many I had on each one of them. Okay. But I'm still not happy. I mean, I want to order this in a better way. I want to know which one is the favorite one into the last one. So what do I do then? Well, let's sort this dictionary, but I'm going to sort it to have from the most popular to the less popular. So that's what I did. I take here that dictionary, I look at the values. So I look at the 324, the 81, and I just order based on the most popular to the less popular. And having that, you know, organized that way, and I'm just going to go a bit lower, it allows me to build this sort of visualizations. So at this point, and I put it in percentage to make it comparable, because if you work with absolute values, it's harder to actually quantify how much, what is the difference between one to another, right? So if I look like this, okay, so clearly walking and jogging is a winner, right? And then we have gym, team sport, and so on. And clearly Zumba dance lost, okay? So it's not the favorites, the top favorites. Okay, so just bear in mind how we started, right? All of those options all together. And very quickly, we did not do much code because a lot of the things you're seeing here is just for the visualization purpose. The data preparation itself, it was only with a few lines of code, okay? So another thing that we can look at is at what time people prefer to do exercise. And at this point, we are looking at the column time. So the time actually, that specific column, it wasn't like an hour, it was the period of the day. So either early morning, afternoon, or evening. And then again, we also counted, but here we're just showing how you can play with visualizations as well, right? So there's many things. So at this point, clearly early morning and evening, barely not anyone likes to work out in the afternoon, okay? And then, I mean, there's more manipulations here. Just to give you some time for questions and answers, I'm just gonna skip it, okay? But it's again, you know, bringing value from that initial data frame and working on top of it. So here is a difference from gender and male, and we know more or less how much minutes they exercise. And we did this, here's some manipulation on top of it. And just to go here on the end. So the bottom line is, as I go through this journey, I am able to take that data frame, and within the same notebook, I can actually take a lot of insights. Some of them, we saw it here together, others, I didn't have time to go through it, but think about it. I know that more or less based on the age group, when does it become more important for me to work out? I know which one is a favorite activity, which one is more popular, what time in the day people like to work out, right? How much time on average they spend exercising and so on. Okay, so I hope this gave you an example of how we can work using Python on data and to bring insights from it. Okay, because we did a lot of cleaning in there. Now, given that, as I said, just because of time, I just also want to share with you, what do I need to do to have those skills? Where do I go, right? And that's a point that I also wanted to take some time here with you. So where do I study? Let's look at different examples. So one of the things that is really nice regarding tech is that we can do a lot of self-learning. Nowadays on the internet, you have a lot of information that is available for you. So you can build knowledge and you can go to the location that it fits the best. It's worked for you better using YouTube videos. You have Coursera's, you have blogs, you have a lot of different information. Now, of course, everything has its positive and negative points. The positive point is that it's out there. And many times, you know, when we get stuck, we can find the answer in there. If we want to learn, you also can take the journey in there. However, keep in mind that if you really have some specific doubts, you are kind of isolated because you're doing a self-learning, right? You're doing it in your own space. And you need to have a lot of determination as well, because it's a journey and it's not going to be easy across the whole journey, and you are alone. So that's, I would say, two of the points that sometimes makes it a bit hard for me to do it on my own. Having that said, doesn't mean that you can't find communities. A very good example is the free and open software free and open source software. In there, you have a lot of interesting projects that if you really want to, you know, take a self-learning journey and you go there and you at least are learning and being part of something. So you have a sort of a support group in there where you have other colleagues that are also trying to resolve something. And that could be an option for you to think about. So that's one thing. And to be honest, I think this one is always a reality. Even though if you choose the other ones as well, this one should always be something that we work on top of it, okay? Now, the other one, I would say it's the most traditional one, right? So there are many really good university degrees that allows you to gain the knowledge that you need to work in the data field. So I think I don't need to highlight that, because universities have built a reputation for themselves, and it's very, very strong. The only thing is that sometimes, according to our lives, maybe we don't want to go through that journey. It could be because I already have another degree, or I don't have a life that accommodates that because I have a daily job. It's very hard for me to be at university. I don't live close to the university. So there are several reasons why sometimes university is not the right answer. And also because maybe you want to learn something very specific, and in universities, it tends to be more broad. Okay. So that's kind of, let's say, the highlight. You can find very good degrees on universities, but maybe sometimes it's not exactly what you're looking for. Now, going to CodeOp, so I'm here talking with you guys from the bootcamp, right? So what do we do here? So the objective from a bootcamp is to be an alternative in the sense that we leverage for more an intensive training. It has a lot of hands-on, but also you have a community that is working with you. Not only your colleagues, but also you have the lectures, right? So you have a lot of support, and that actually makes a difference. And we can accommodate both because they are trainings that is full-time, but also part-time. So it can actually fit to, you know, we all have different lives, but in the end of the day, it's about finding the answer to your life, right? So that's the thing. Here, we can find full-time. Imagine you have a period that it also fits for you, but it can't be for 2-3 years, but maybe for 2 months, 3 months works for you. We also have part-time, so you can do by the end of your day. And finally, let's say that you look at the modules and you think, well, in reality, I want to upskill my skills, but only for those specific ones. And we also have the option for modules. So you take the modules that you care about and you have all of this support on those specific modules. So that's the advantage, I would say, for the bootcamp. You take the learnings. It is quite intensive, so keep that in mind. I'm not saying that it's easy, but you take the learnings, you do learn, but you focus within a much shorter time in your life. So it's easy for you to adjust. Now, at CodeOp, and I just want to finish with this one. So if you do join to be one of our students, how does it look like? How would be, let's say, a daily life as a CodeOp student? So our format contemplates a lot of hands-on activity, as I was saying, right? So how does this play out? So the lecture gives you the content. They explain to you the theory behind, so you have what it's necessary for you to do it on your own. So when I say on your own, it means you have an activity by the end of it, right? Now, that activity, we do promote for you to try to do it on your own, so you find all your roadblocks. But if you're really stuck, you have your colleagues, you have the lectures, and you also have the tech channel for it, okay? But on the next session, what we do is we review that activity together. So the activity review focus on you did something and you're going to review it together, and we're going to brainstorm together, especially if we find a lot of common problems. So yes, let's resolve them together as in the class. Okay. It's an interactive lecture. So unlike right now that I'm talking a lot, that's not how our classes work. So our classes, the lecturer is talking, you have a doubt, you want something to be explained better, you shout, not shout literally, but you say, hey, I didn't explain, and I didn't understand very well. So it's very interactive. We might go to different formats to just, understand it together, that specific doubt. So it's very, very interactive. So of course we have the activity that you do part in the class, but then also we review together, and the tech support. So this is kind of, let's say, all that is available for you as a CodeOp student, okay? And finally, there's a community that has been growing a lot, and it's not only for students. So even if you do not decide to enroll as a student, go ahead and join us. And I think we still have some time for questions. Yes.
Thanks, Filipa. I think there were some questions earlier on up in the chat. I don't know if you can see them or if you want me to read them out.
I can't see the chat right now. I don't know why. Let me stop sharing. Wait. I can see the chat. Yes.
If not, people can unmute and ask questions, but there were a couple of questions there waiting to be answered. So maybe you can go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So I can see the chat now because I stopped sharing. Okay. So just give me a sec. So what languages do you recommend as the main programming language for data analysts, SQL? And so I would recommend Python. So Python is right now the programming language that I think in general data analysts and data scientists use for their job. You also have PySpark, but if you think about it, it builds on top of Python. Now, just to bring an alternative, there's R, but in my view, it's gaining less and less popularity. So I'm not sure, Joanne, if you also want to jump in here, but I would recommend Python and SQL as well.
Absolutely. I mean, as a programming language, has been gaining a lot of momentum, I think, in the data science and data analytics community. And the fact that you know a programming language gives you a lot of leverage to learn scripting languages, like is the case of R or other languages that are a little bit simpler, so to speak.
Yeah. So is SQL very important if you are solely a Tableau consultant? I would say yes, because for you to build your dashboards, you also need to prepare many times the data to be ready for that dashboard. And many times they come from SQL, from data warehouses, and you need to know how to get your data ready. So yes. And also in terms of, Tableau dashboards, which I didn't mention much, but, what sometimes happens is that you go through the journey of preparing the data for the dashboards. You don't need necessarily to be the visualization specialist, okay? But you need to know how to organize your data. So yes, that's absolutely an important skill. For someone new in the data analytics role, what are your recommendations for learning to hit the ground running? So you mean by when you should start learning the basis? I'm assuming that's the question. This is from Abraham. So I think that's a bit of what I was saying regarding where to learn, right? So you have the self-learning, and I think Coursera is a very good starting point if you want to do it on your own. You have many good courses in there, with also some challenges. If you want to do a lot of hands-on activities, Kaggle is also a very good source. So you take a challenge, you also have the community, you can share your results, you can even enter competition. So that's also a good place to start. And then of course you have the trainings and so on. But if you want to start on your own, I would go for those two places. Coursera to at least learn the theory, right? You need to understand what we're doing, and then Kaggle for taking new challenges. I'm not sure when I said leverage. So what you mean by leverage, I guess you don't mean the financial sense. Well, I can bring it to the financial sense. So I'm not sure when I said leverage. So, so if you think about it, what you can bring to the industry as a data scientist or data analyst, you are helping to support decisions. So many of those decisions are quantified in terms of benefits. Those benefits are quantified from a financial perspective. Okay, so I'm not sure if that point I was talking about that, but absolutely, because in the end of the day, you are part of a team and you need to show how much value does the work from the data team brought to the company. So that's also measurable. Is the code shown to create these charts Python SQL? So the code that you saw, it was Python. So the exercise, everything was in Python. And we were mainly using the pandas library, which is the data frame that allows us to do all that data manipulations in a very nice way. So is it possible for non-engineering student to become big data analytics? I'm an undergrad in majoring in accounting. Absolutely. So this I can talk firsthand. I've had students from many different backgrounds. Some of them, when they arrived, they knew zero about they had zero programming skills. And right now, some of them are already senior data scientists in different companies, and some of them really good in terms of reputation. So that's not at all a roadblock. So if I can share the Python notebook, I leave this up to Joanna because I don't know how we can share. Is it possible?
Yeah, it's possible to share the CodeOp. Yeah, we can send the link.
Okay. Okay, added value. probably. I don't know. No, I missed the context. Sorry. It was you, Francisca. I don't know. But there's added value from our teams as well. So I mean, this is thinking about what is the role of the data teams within the industry. So what is our added value? So many times we need to go there and present it, and it can be from, being able many times to leverage information that was out there and it was not being used. So that's one of the things. But of course, in the end of the day, we will quantify it as benefits. All right, thank you. Is there any more questions?
I think there was just one more there at the end. What is the relationship of data analysts to data visualization experts?
Okay. So if you think about the data visualization experts, data visualization is how do I convey my message in the right way? Okay, what is the best plot to show it? Which colors are the best? What is the size of the numbers and so on? So all of these things, it's focused on the visualizations. How do I pass my message? So usually the data scientists and data analysts do not focus as much on it. They focus on the insights, right? Not saying that the visualization is not important, quite the contrary, but well, there's a lot of skills throughout that journey. So the data visualization experts, they're very good on telling the story from image, from plots. And there's a lot of work in that field as well. So I have to say that I am enthusiastic on it, but I am not an expert, but I do see a lot of value in it.
If I could just jump in here, I was just going to add in the chat here a link to, I think it's tomorrow night. Filipa and Joanna have some students that are presenting their final projects. Yeah. And so if you want to see kind of their projects in action, I don't know if you can explain a little bit more about what they're doing, Filipa. So you can, if you want to hear more, you can see that.
So tomorrow we have let's say the end of the boot camp for a class of 4 students. They are 2 groups. One of them is going to show you how they were able to build a model for fake news. So working with text, but in a very specific challenge, if you think about it. And then we have another problem that is looking on how we can predict how it's going to look like the price of rents in the city of Barcelona. So they actually took data from tons of places. It was super noisy, and they built their time series models.
Nice, thanks very much. And so if anyone wants to join, they can just click on that link. And for the CodeOp notebook, the one that somebody was asking about before, I mean, Joanna, does it make sense if when I send out an email tomorrow, I can include that?
I just shared it in the chat window.
Oh, you included?
Yeah, right now.
I think it was only to me.
I think you've just
really?
sent it to I was
okay.
going to say, I think you've sent this privately to somebody because I can't see it.
I apologize. Okay, here it is.
There we go. Thanks for the reminder, Shaila, about that. There's the CodeOp notebook there. Perfect. I mean, if there are no more questions.
Maybe someone wants to ask a question like
yeah, out loud.
I mean, that will be okay.
We'll just pause to see if anyone has any last questions. I'm just going to pop my email address in here. I mean, if anyone has any questions about CodeOp, our events, our bootcamps, or anything, feel free to reach out to me, and I can also put you in touch with the relevant people as well if you wanted to have a chat with Joanna or Filipa or anything like that. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. Thank you very much, Filipa, as well, for the really great presentation. Have a lovely evening, everybody. And yeah, I'll follow up with the link if you didn't get that. The link that Joanna sent there, I'll follow up with everything tomorrow, likely in an email as well. Thanks very much, everybody.